And if we could all please rise. While we have Legislator Maisano lead us in the pledge to the flag.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Almighty God, give us the strength, courage, and wisdom to always act in the best interest of the people of Westchester while we're in this chamber. Let us keep in mind that every decision that we make impacts upon the life, health, and safety of all our great county residents. Amen. Madam Clerk.
Majority Leader Harcum.
Here.
Minority Leader Maisano. Ms. Borgia.
Here.
Mr. Burrows. Mr. Gelfer. Mr. Kaplowitz.
Present.
Ms. Marcotte. Ms. Myers.
Here.
Ms. Perez. Mr. Ryan.
Here.
Ms. Shimsky.
Here.
Mr. Smith.
Here.
Ms. Spreckman. Mr. Testa.
Here.
Ms. Williams.
Here.
Mr. Williams.
Here.
Mr. Chairman.
Here.
Mr. Chairman, we have a quorum.
Thank you so much, Mr. Harcum.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. At this time, I would move the consent agenda with no revisions.
Mr. Maisano. Mr. Williams.
I'm in agreement.
We are on consent. Mr. Harcum for minutes approval.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Would move the two sets of minutes. The meeting, the 10 a.m. meeting that was held on Wednesday, May 1st, and the 7 p.m. meeting that was held Monday, May 20th.
Members without objection? So ordered. Madam Clerk, public comment.
Each speaker shall be limited to 3 minutes. I'll call the names of the speakers and ask that you please come down the aisle to my left and wait behind the black ropes. Regina Riley, Edmund Riley, Murray Bowden. The first speaker is Regina Riley.
Good evening. My name is Regina Riley. I'm from the 9th Legislative District. In India, 100 million women are not there because the couples aborted the girls in favor of giving birth to baby boys. In China, Red China, they admit to only 20 million women aborted. But men of marriageable age outnumber their female counterparts by 2 to 1. I have heard nothing from National Organization of Women, National Abortion Rights Action League, International Planned Parenthood, or Planned Parenthood of America expressing outrage. Along similar lines, a Westchester public school, which teaches 11-year-olds, 12-year-olds, and 13-year-olds, both girls and boys, has had at least 2 girls go for abortions. Did the girls have to get a parent's permission? No. Did one of the parents at least even have to know his or her child had an abortion? No. The only way the parent would learn of the abortion is if their insurance company sent them a bill for the part of the bill that had to be paid by the parent. What if there is sexual abuse or statutory rape suspected? Are Planned Parenthood clinic employees mandated to report to the police under criminal consequences? No. The rest of us are. That is, anybody who's a teacher or a hospital worker, a policeman, fireman. Does this embolden child predators, child sexual predators, and statutory rapists to continue their perversions? Yes. Present New York State abortion law has already victimized girls, and Governor Cuomo wants to ramp up his war on women. Where is the outrage against girls? Crickets. I'm asking this legislature to really have some courage, because it'll take some courage to do this, swimming against the tide. I'm asking you to pass a resolution to ban sex selection abortion, a la 100 million women from India who were aborted, and to stop any liberalization of an already predator-friendly abortion law in New York, which Mrs. Galiff, Ms. Stewart-Cousins, Ms. Amy Paulin, Ms. Hassel-Thompson, Mr. Carlucci, Mr. Latimer, Mr. Terry Gibson have all been in favor of passing. And I'm asking you, and I wonder, how many baby girls today are missing in New York State from over the last 43 years?
Edmund Riley?
My name is Ed Riley. I'm from Croton. What we mean here is that he regularly and illegally delivered live, viable babies in their third trimester of pregnancy. Then he murdered these newborns by severing their spinal cords with scissors. This is the indictment, by the way, 400 pages. The medical practice by which he carried out his business was a filthy fraud in which he overdosed his patients with dangerous drugs, spread venereal disease among them with infected instruments, perforated their wombs and bowels, and on at least 2 occasions caused their deaths. Over the years, many people came to know that something wrong was going in there, but they did nothing, as they did nothing in New York State with Stephen Chase Brigham, as they did nothing in New York State with Mark Bender of Westchester County down the block, as they did nothing with the Church Street Clinic until we went and intervened, as they did nothing with Dr. Payne in Queens, as they did nothing with Dr. Zuro in Rockland County and Queens, as they did nothing with the butcher on Route 59 who killed Jezeline LaFontaine, as they did nothing with Dr. Callie in Dobbs Ferry when he killed Dawn Mendoza and let her bleed to death, as they did nothing with Dr. Rubin. And now the governor of the state of New York, this outrageous imbecile, moral imbecile, wants to officially legalize third trimester in New York. My friends, it's being done in New York now. It's being done illegally. And he says he wants to implement Roe v. Wade. He's not even good enough attorney to understand it wasn't Roe v. Wade that made abortion legal for 9 months. It was Doe v. Bolton. He's that bad an attorney. And that's what he's going to talk about tomorrow. Why? Because there's 18,500 to 22,500 late-term abortions waiting to be done here in this state, which are being done in the United States now. More, you won't find this in the press, more than all the heart transplants, more than all the liver transplants, more than all the kidney transplants done in the United States. Now, it must mean there are too few abortions done in New York, right? There are 50 states in the United States. Did I say 50, right? 10% of all abortions are done in this state. And you know the rule of economics. If you want more of something, subsidize it. That's what we do. We, the citizens and taxpayer, pay for 50% of the abortions done in New York State. Oh, and it's going to be rare. Oh, yeah? 50% of all abortions in this state are repeat abortions. And did you know, according to their own statistics, which are inaccurate, low, 15% of all late-term abortions are done in this state. And if you ever got your butt around to look at the stat on the computer and look at the disciplinary files, you would find out how the abortionists do that in this state. And why do they want to do that? The number of late-term abortions is not going down, it's going up. And you get $5,000 to $25,000 per abortion, depending on whether you're doing twins, triplets, and so forth. That's why they want to legalize it in New York State. Every other state is restricting abortion allowable under the Constitution, because the abortion industry, specifically 4 people in this legislature and in the state legislature, control Planned Parenthood, control the legislature. That's why they want to expand it, when the trend is the other way. Now, I'm looking at a number of young people in this audience.
Mr. Riley, could you wrap it up?
Young, I'm about to finish. Youth is made for courage. We need young people to devote their lives to ending the torture, butchery, decapitation, dismemberment, and burning to death of fellow human beings, which your parents and grandparents have allowed to go on in this state for 50 years.
Murray Bowden.
I'll wait. It's okay.
Mr. Bowden.
No, if you have something to take care of, because I want your attention when you're free. First, I want to thank everybody who's helped me over the years, advised me. I appreciate it. I couldn't have done it without you. And I can't name you individually. Those people I've insulted over the years and said things that were inappropriate, I apologize. In my youth, I made a lot of mistakes, even as recently as a month ago. I would rather have said it differently, but I did say what I said, and some of it was wrong, and I wish I hadn't said it, but it's on the record, and I stand by, and I apologize. We're stuck in a circular reasoning kind of thing. I deal with the lines on a road, and what I've discovered that they've been doing it wrong for 20 years. Because the plans that come down from Albany, the picture's been wrong for 20 years, and they just published a new copy of it, and that's wrong. But everybody's been doing it wrong for so long, they assume it's correct. Now we have the moral dilemma of letting people admit they've been wrong for 20 years and correcting it. So far, I've spoken at the Port Authority, and this morning at the MTA, and last week New Jersey Turnpike and the Thruway. It's known that this is absolutely incorrect, and Westchester's guilty of it because I've been talking about the airport's the clearest example of it. How do you arrange for people who've been doing it wrong for 20 years to correct it? Nobody's willing to take the first step. And that's what's going on a lot around this place. There are things that are wrong, and nobody can admit that we've been doing it wrong for years and years and years. This one I've got down to one picture on one paper, and everybody's doing it wrong, and a lot of people know it. I'll be in Maine at the end of next month confronting the Federal Highway Administration. They know I'm coming. They know I'm going to say this. They can't get out of it either. How do you resolve a long-term problem that everybody's been doing wrong and nobody can admit? The fallout is many other things that go around the county. People do wrong because everybody does it that way. I'm at a loss to do the next step. I have notified many people that I'm looking for a hotshot reporter who wants to do a Watergate-type investigation because it's worth the national information. I've asked every police jurisdiction in the metropolitan area to run a background check on me because I don't want them to come after me, and they will hack me, and find out something that's going to embarrass me, like many other people have been embarrassed recently. I've been checked by a number of police departments, and I'm clean, which is why I can talk this way, because they're going to come after me. Well, I don't know how to get forward, but some hotshot reporter may be able to take this and go with it. I'm looking everywhere for a solution. I've changed the way I do business. I've set my watch for 1 minute. My meetings are 1 minute in the hall, and if I can't explain it to you in 1 minute, I don't belong talking to you. No more office meetings. They're useless. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I have no other cards.
All right, Madam Clerk, let's go to unfinished business.
Unfinished business, item 6126 was severed and held over from the May 20th, 2013 consent agenda. Appears here as an item of unfinished business for action. It's submitted by the Committees on Budget Appropriations and Government Operations, an act requiring that each year the Commissioner of Parks, Recreation, and Conservation provide weekly reports to the Budget and Appropriations Committee and the Committee on Government Operations of the Board of Legislators, comparing the current year's Playland Park attendance and revenue figures with those from the previous year.
Ms. Myers.
Yes, thank you. This came before the Committee on Budget and Appropriations and is no different from what we had asked for last year at this time. This is something that I think that the Committee on Budget and Appropriation views as its due diligence. It would allow us to basically have a handle every week on how we are doing at Playland, and specifically in all of the different areas of the park. This is perhaps no more necessary this year than other years, except for the very fact that we are also in the process through the Committee on Government Operations of looking at a potential manager for Playland, in which case it certainly behooves this Board of Legislators to have a weekly eye on all of the facts and figures coming out of Playland. Therefore, Budget and Appropriations moved this to the floor. I will now turn this over to Government Operations Chair. Thank you.
Ms. Borgia.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As the Chair of Government Operations, and actually prior to that in my other public service roles, and even as a sort of community volunteer, I've always been an advocate for our parks. I think that it's very, very critically important to have good parks and recreation. It's something that really makes a municipality, a community, a county, really enhances the quality of life, makes it a desirable place. I think that the managing of parks is actually a very tricky business, and it really requires a level of dedication and work ethic and updates, maintenance. Things happen in parks that you don't expect. The weather is unpredictable. You have to react to a lot of different situations in parks. So as the Chair of Government Operations Committee, I've really gotten to know, in particular, the County Parks Department. And many of you know and are all invited to come with me on my parks tours, which I have been continuing pretty regularly. I had a couple good ones last week. And I've really gotten to know the people who run our county parks, who love our county parks, who work in our county parks, including from the commissioner down to the person who cuts the grass. And one thing I will say about our commissioner is she knows the person who cuts the grass, and she knows what that person's family situation is, and she knows where that person's son is going to college. And, you know, the people who run our parks are really very, very dedicated, wonderful people. They need us in partnership with them. We need to provide them the resources, the help, the things that they need to make these parks successful. We are contemplating right now, between the administration and the legislative branch, a change in how Playland Park is run for the following year, but we are running it this year I know that every single person who is involved in Playland Park, I believe I have met almost every one of them in my many trips there. They want that park to be successful. And in order for that park to be successful, the legislative body that controls the purse strings needs to know what is going on, what is working, what isn't working. We have all offered to help them to make this place successful. For many, many years, the Parks Committee, Government Operations Committee, however it was constituted that year, and the Budget Committee have received this information from regarding Playland, and that has helped us to make changes as we go along in the operations of Playland. You can't make good policy decisions if you don't have good numbers. And the interesting thing about this act is that this was a continuation. We actually refined it in both Budget Committee and Government Operations Committee in collaboration with the Parks Department, where they told us what's easy for them to report and what isn't easy for them to report. We broke it out so that they would know exactly the kinds of things we were interested in, exactly what we were interested in with respect to what's going on, so we can see things like, hey, when we're rolling in all the figures of the revenue that the park has made, how much is actually made up by the rental of the picnic tables, for example, or how much is made up by outings, special outings that companies have at Playland. And if there has been a decrease in the number of outings that have happened in Playland, how can we help? How can we advocate Playland as a venue for our companies in Westchester County? We need to be there for Playland, and in order for us to be the advocates for Playland, that it is our responsibility to be. Playland is an asset that is owned by the people of Westchester County. We need to maintain this, keep this a beautiful asset for our residents to enjoy. It's got such historic value. It's got so much emotional resonance in Westchester County. There is no reason not to have information at the legislative body, since we are responsible. It's our sworn duty to make sure that our operations have what they need. And that is why the Government Operations Committee worked on this legislation. That is why the Government Operations Committee passed this on to the floor, because we want to be able to work collaboratively and to help our Parks Department. And one of the ways we can do that is with information. And the ironic thing is that our Parks Department did tell us that some things they know right away and some things they don't know right away. But we wanted to give them the criteria that we want. We understand that some things, you know, if you click how many people are in, you know exactly the attendance. Sometimes it might take a little bit longer to get some of the other broken out data. That's fine. We just want to have a clear sense of what's going on in this park. And we have such a good relationship with the administration of our Parks Department and the Government Operations Committee, and they are very willing to tell us anything that we ask. So I don't believe that this is controversial legislation. This is a continuation of our practices, refining for the better, working in collaboration with our staff. And I personally would like to move this, and Government Operations Committee move this to the floor, because we do feel it's an important piece of legislation. So I would like to move this forward. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Mr. Kaplowitz.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The sentiment that's been expressed by both committee chairs is, for what it's worth, at least in this legislator's point of view, dead on, correct. We do need to have good information. The problem is that in collecting this information, a number of things crop up. First is just the administrative obligation and the administrative burden, even as admitted by the most recent chair. Some of this data is not readily available and needs to be compiled. Doing it on a weekly basis, I think, is a little bit too much. I mean, we might as well do it on a daily basis if we're trying to create a trend. Daily, weekly, do not create that trend, do not give us really the valuable information that we want. I think there's a sentiment on this board, and I would ask that the chairs of the two committees consider moving this to a monthly type, quarterly, or certainly on a monthly basis. Remember, the way this is written, it's provide written weekly reports for all operating seasons. You're looking at 52 reports. 12 is administratively much easier to put together. 12 can also be much more valuable. The committee would not even have a chance on a weekly basis to get all this information and to be able to meet each week and to digest this information. Staff on a weekly basis would not be able to 52 times go through this information. And if you're looking for trends, 1 week does not make a trend. 1 week could be a rainy week, If you do it on a monthly basis, you do get some of that. So if the goal is to get good information, I think this certainly moves in that direction. As the chair has indicated, we do have a fiduciary obligation. It is very valuable to have it, but I think it's an overkill if you do it on a weekly basis, and frankly, you don't get the good numbers that you want. So the administrative difficulties, I think, overrides it. The second piece is that this legislation really hasn't even contemplated, is it says requiring that, comma, each year, comma, the commissioner shall provide weekly reports. Well, I think it probably should be drafted for 2013, because starting in 2014, by contemplation at least, there's going to be a new operator, whoever it is, X, Y, Z, ABC, and we need to contemplate in conjunction with this new operator what data conform to, as I understand the committees did to parks, what systems they track, how they track it, and what information can be gotten to us. And we need to do the same coordinating for next year. So I would urge that we take it back to committee, or if we're willing to do it on the floor, make an act requiring that for 2013 that there shall be provided a written monthly report. Then we get good data, then we have time to contemplate it, then we get the trends that we want. We get the same oversight. If you get this data on a weekly basis, the ability to make a change is not going to be impaired by doing it on a monthly basis. 12 times a year is still going to be a full-time job, but given what's at stake, it's certainly understood. And I think that if you want then the direct revenue categories as listed, if you want the limited to revenue and revenue equivalent, directly or indirectly for fees and leases and contracts and licensing and donations and promotions and events and in kind, I could just anticipate that we'd be putting a full-time person on just on a weekly basis trying to contemplate with this information. I don't think, in the best government sense, I don't think we're trying to create work. I think in the best government sense, we're trying to get good information, timely basis. Monthly we'll do it. For this year we'll do it. And then we'll have an opportunity to review it. I think this is an overkill and something that administratively I can't support, because I don't want to burden one or more people at the parks level that will become full-time reporters on Playland. That's not what's contemplated. Good information is, and the ability for us to then integrate it monthly is certainly a good way to do that, in my opinion. Thank
Point of order, Mr. Chairman. If Mr. Kaplan made a motion, I'd like to second the motion, but I want to know specifically if the motion is just to increase it from a week to a month. Is that the motion?
Well, the motion.
Wait,
Forgive me, sir.
thank you. No, there was not a motion at this point in time. He's on the question right now. So certainly we'll have an opportunity after members do the question to come back, right? Okay. Ms. Shimsky, Ms. Hargum has preference should he choose
Okay.
so.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm rather flummoxed about this idea that we should only report every month because it's such a once a month because it's such a terrible administrative burden. The fact of the matter is, government ops meets every week. We have been receiving weekly data from Playland all along, at least since I've been on the board. And we also have budget staff who has regularly been crunching the numbers, and they can get to it more frequently than once a month. I don't understand why we would pass legislation that would reduce the reporting responsibility by 75% in a year when we are going to be expected to make rather momentous decisions with the fate of Playland. I think we should make sure that we have the same amount of information we've had all along, and that is weekly reporting. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Shimsky. Ms. Myers, are you rebutting something because you presented the item?
I
Yeah.
am rebutting.
Ms. Myers.
Yes, I believe that one of the questions was with regards to whether the chair of Budget and Appropriations would consider making or recommending a change. What I do find interesting is that at both meetings, since I sit on government operations as well as being chair of Budget and Appropriations, at both meetings, it was never noted by either the Commissioner of Parks and Recreation or her deputy that this was a seemingly onerous task, as my colleague Legislator Kaplowitz seems to infer, and that indeed they have these numbers daily. So we are asking for them weekly, and that did not seem to be an issue to anyone, at least who was represented by the Parks and Recreation staff. Thank you.
Mr. Harkam,
I'll pass, Mr. Chair.
other members? Mr. Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This legislation, this act requiring reports, very, very, very poor reflection on this body. Let me tell you why. It says that we as a body on the 8th floor, and as described, the co-equal branch of government in one form or another, cannot get information from another branch of government. It means that if we ask for it, they wouldn't necessarily provide it for us without this act. And I think that's really a shame. Are we going to start asking for acts for everything we need to do around here? If we want to get our bathroom clean, are we going to have to pass an act for that? I mean, how ridiculous are we going to get with this kind of stuff? I mean, we sat in committee, we talked to the commissioner. We said, Commissioner, would you provide this report to us without an act? She said, of course, no problem. Now, a report that we want on a weekly basis. I continue to be amazed by this board's fascination with the details of Playland. We've got a $1.7 billion county government here. We've got a Playland operation that loses, depending on how you want to account for it, between $3 to $5 million a year. It has been for a number of years. This is nothing new. But we have someone who wants to know how many picnic benches we've rented. Who cares? We could double, triple, or half the number of picnic benches we rent. What's this board going to do about it? Nothing. If this board got reports on a daily, hourly basis, what would we do about it? Nothing. We'll get weekly reports. Even this act, as we have seen before from this body, represents another piece of legislation of frustration. Now, if I was to read this and really pull this apart, it says weekly report. But it doesn't say weekly report by when. So the weekly report on a comparison basis could be provided to us a year from now. There's no time requirement as to when this needs to be done. Now, I asked the board in committee, when I was in committee, I said, do we have any precedent for doing this kind of thing before, having an act to request a report for information from the county? And I said, well, it was said to me that someone believed that this similar act was done in a previous period. If we want to talk about Playland, let's talk about the future of Playland. We can get all the reports we want on an hourly, weekly, monthly basis on Playland. We have limited ability to do anything about it at this point in time now. And we have people whose full-time job is to work on Playland. We have many, many important things in this county government to deal with. A weekly fascination with Playland to talk about the number of picnic benches we have out there. It's silly. This is not why we were elected. The people of Westchester County did not elect us to look on a weekly basis to see what the numbers for Playland are. We've got to do much better than this, folks. We've got to do much better. Thank you.
Mr. Harkam.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I unpass at this time. I would just simply say that I do not rise at any point to say why any of us are here but myself. I was sent here, I believe, to delve into this $1.7 billion budget in all its complexity, and any detail that I may ask for and require in my analysis and oversight as an elected official I'm entitled to, as are all 16 of my colleagues. And it is not up to me to belittle the requests of anyone or the work ethic or the amount of oversight that somebody wants to give or the focus areas. I think it's just offensive to hear in this chamber that what some people call oversight, other people call pointless. The reason we had this act was because we spent a year in frustration not getting this information. And the reason we need this information is we have been told for years and years and years that Playland is hemorrhaging money, that it's going out of business, that it needs a dramatic overhaul as we talk about the future of Playland. Well, guess what, folks? What the numbers said from this analysis was last year, if you remove debt service, Playland made a profit of $100,000 last year. That's the one thing that people aren't being told. Playland made a profit of $100,000 last year if you took out debt service. We've now just taken out $8 million in debt service on Ward Pound Ridge, a gorgeous park up in my area. Are we now going to apply the same standard and say Ward Pound Ridge is hemorrhaging money, so we need to move a casino into Ward Pound Ridge to offset the cost? No. So there are reasons the legislators need this information. They were elected in their district. Their voters elected them to seek the information that they want. And no legislator in this body has a right to tell them what they can and cannot have access to and what's silly in another district. So I'm going to support this because we do need this data, and furthermore, the last several months we have gotten this data. After we got through that logjam, we have gotten the data on a weekly basis. And what this act simply says is it lays out the format after a year of trial and error, how we need that data. And the Commissioner of Parks said it was no problem. Deputy Commissioner Tartaglia said it was no problem. As Chairwoman Borges said, there was a collaborative exchange on how the information would be exchanged, how they could access the data, that this would not be an onerous exercise. But this was an act of frustration. And I will agree with my colleague on that, because this board asked for over a year for this information and didn't get it. So that's why this act is here. It's simply quantifying what we have been getting recently, but it quantifies it in a format that's usable for all. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to support what my colleague, Legislator Harcum, just said about the need for information and the question that the committee chairs really are the ones who have the responsibility for making sure that the committees have information. And I think to somewhat denigrate or criticize their efforts in trying to obtain information so that we as legislators can exercise oversight, which we are obligated to do, I think is appalling. It has been a self-fulfilling prophecy that Playland is a failure, that it's a financial failure, and it's based on unsubstantiated claims, numbers that are thrown around, $5 million being lost, $3 million being lost. And never has there been an attempt to quantify and to look at whether or not these are factually based statements. And what the committee is simply doing is saying, look, we want to look at Playland and determine whether or not these statements are accurate. Based on information that we have now, it appears that the statements are totally erroneous. And the question about the fact that Playland, when you put the debt service in, appears to be losing money, and when you take the debt service in, it does not, raises a question as to what the real profit really could be at Playland. We are about to enter into a contract that was sent to us by the administration that says, go ahead and rubber stamp that contract. And in that contract, if you read it, the debt service stays with the county. So it's no different from where Playland is. I think that if you're going to make a judgment, we need to look at the information. And whether or not it's weekly or monthly, the statement was made that it's burdensome. Well, if the committees have questioned the persons in the department and they did not believe that this is a burdensome request, I think deference ought to be given to the commissioners rather than legislators standing up here trying to determine whether or not the commissioner of parks is able to supply information. Now, some legislators might say, I don't want that information, and that is fine. But why should others who need it be denied the same information if it's available? And that's That's really a critical point. The other thing that I really wanted to mention is that transparency and oversight can never be too much. I mean, we need more transparency, and getting information on a weekly basis does not make it any better. It does not make getting information monthly better because you get it weekly. It's cumulative numbers. So if the committee decides we would like to see this information on a weekly basis, I think as a legislative branch that most legislative branches would defer to that, given that the commissioners have not indicated that this is a burdensome request. But not surprisingly, we're here debating it tonight. Thank you.
Ms. Marcotte.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I rise to say a couple of things because I think it's obvious that nobody in this room has even yet disputed the need for the data, the need for the numbers, and the need for the oversight, because we all agree we need it. We need it. It's part of our job. We need the numbers. We can dispute whether or not we need it on a weekly basis. I don't personally think we need to see it every week. I think monthly is more than sufficient. With regard to the commissioners, let's look at how this transpired. The commissioners were given an act to comply with. They weren't asked. I don't believe they were asked. At least in the meeting I attended, they weren't asked. I asked them, how time-consuming, how cumbersome was this on you? They were basically speechless, and they nodded their heads. Enough said. This is a lot of work that you are piling on their plate to produce for every Monday morning. You can't even dispute that. That's a fact. There's a lot of work. The other thing I wanted to point out, because I just find it interesting, I'm actually flummoxed over this as well. Several times tonight, we've heard this referred to as legislation. But here's the irony. This never even went to the legislation committee. We were told that it was assigned to government operations and to budget, and that 17 legislators chose not to send it to legislation. This was never on an agenda. This was injected into committee. It never even went to the legislation committee. I think that's just wrong unto itself. We refer to it as legislation, but we don't review it. I don't know. The last thing I will point out, and one of the reasons why it should have gone to the legislation committee, I don't even know if this can be binding on the management company once they take over Playland. So we're creating an act, or attempting to create a piece of legislation that will be binding on somebody, but there's no evidence that will suggest the commissioners going forward will be able to get these numbers and produce these weekly reports in the future. And I think that's something, as Legislator Capowitz suggested, maybe we should have just changed the date for this year only. But instead, this is an ongoing, appears to be ongoing legislation that I don't believe can even be complied with going forward in the future. So I'm not supporting this. I just wanted to put that on the record, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Marcotte. Other members? Mr. Ryan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So we don't really go off on a tangent and rewrite history here. Let's look at why this was necessary in the first place. We had asked the administration, we were under a set of, I'll call them rules, their rules and regulations as to how we get information that we deem necessary for us to do our jobs as a legislature. In this particular area, we were in need of information. That information was not forthcoming. One of the things that has been mentioned here tonight, and I'll agree with, and it's unfortunate, but the majority of this board has found it necessary to move acts that will direct the administration to do one thing or another. In this particular case, it was an act that would direct the administration, working through its Department of Parks and Recreation, to provide these numbers to us. I'm not going to say that every single one of the 17 of this body has an interest in these numbers. Some may, some may not. Some have said that, personally they wouldn't find the numbers useful. Well, there are some of us that might say that personally we would find the numbers useful. Up until now, until the last speaker, up until now, the only real reason put on the floor in opposition to this was, it's a tremendous administrative burden. Well, that certainly is not the case. We know from our our Parks Department, that the bulk of what we are requesting is computerized. At the push of a button, you can get it daily if you want. A few minutes ago, it was suggested well, why would you want it weekly? Well, I don't ask that you necessarily agree with that either, but I'm going to give you one suggestion that we have had a cooperative relationship with the Parks Department over many years, and we have always held ourselves out as a body that is willing to respond quickly to needs, and we do know that putting them in a position to do certain things, such as different marketing tools, for example, that they described to us during last season. We know that on any given Tuesday or Thursday, or pick a day, when they decide to implement, we've had reports back from park personnel and concessionaires that can drive sometimes as much as 1,000 additional attendees into the park for that evening. So I'm not saying it's always going to be something like that, but at least we'll be able to look back and see what the activity was. Some may have no interest, but that doesn't hold much weight with me. If you don't have interest, you don't have interest. If there is interest on the floor, on the part of people who want to utilize this as a tool, I, for one, would say that's a tool that should be provided to them, seeing as how it would be so easy to generate. For those who suggest that maybe a monthly or a quarterly report is good enough, please, we've been there, and we've already made a decision. We want the data, much more frequently than that. It surprises me that, the talk about, well, it's a $1.7 billion budget. We know that. But this is a cost center that has been troubled, depending on what story you listen to. But certainly this body for years has had a very responsible approach to Playland and what we should be doing there to give it a fair chance. And of course, it was up against a set of numbers that were, years ago, we really didn't put pressure on the cost center to be careful in its presentation of numbers. The attendance figure, the 4 heads per car, is a good example. But, in more recent years, I think that, I'd like to think that everybody in this building has become much more serious about Playland and its performance. And it is important that we continue to look at this because we have an important decision to make. Some in this chamber just figure that this is all over and done with. Well, a major part of the Playland question isn't over and done with. It's yet to arrive. And it could very well be that some of you think that 2014 is going to look one way. Well, it could very well be that it doesn't look that way at all. So I think until this government, and I kind of wish it had been, a cooperative effort on the part of 2 branches, and certainly on the part of everyone in this chamber. But until this government makes the final decision, it is like 2013, business as usual. And it is our responsibility, and for this particular season, we need this information. I think that someone suggested that, if by chance it happens to be in the hands of an independent operator under a scheme that they've devised, yeah, it would be difficult to get the numbers, but I would ask, why would we be looking at those numbers? We've already entered an agreement. We've already accepted a payment. We already know what the agreement says or doesn't say with respect to how the county would benefit. So I don't see that as a legitimate point being made here tonight. The basic point is this. We've utilized the information to our benefit in recent years. It's unfortunate that we had to take this action to get it in the first place. But as we've already gone, that's all in the rearview mirror. If the concern this evening is we don't want to put a burden on our people in the department, they've already told us it isn't a burden. And for the large bulk of the numbers that we're looking for, it's the push of a button that can get you the number any day you want it. And certainly to ask for it weekly, in my view, isn't a burden. It puts us in a better position to understand the activity of Playland as it unfolds. So I'll be voting for this, the way I voted for it the last time we asked for it, and the way I voted for it when we first initiated. And I would really ask those of you who are preparing to vote against it to kind of ask yourselves, why would you deny me the use of that information? Why would you deny me if I think it's helpful for me to understand, or any one of the other legislators? What is the harm? Why would you deny that to any legislator that thinks that it would be useful as we go through this period of possible transition, and if not transition, a very important position or period rather, when we're laying a foundation for a stronger effort on the government's part with respect to Playland.
Thank you, Mr. Ryan. Ms. Breckman.
I would just like to say that I have been on the Budget Committee, I have been on GO Committee, and for all the years that I was here, we had a Parks Committee, and I really feel after 18 years that Parks Committee should be separated from government operations. Parks is a big, big thing. Playland is one big part of Parks, but if you had a Parks Committee and you had the people from Parks there as often as you wanted, it should be separate. Government operations has plenty to do without it, and what Mary Jane did with the bridges and the roads, we do get answers to her questions all the time. I am there, and that takes like 3 hours, okay, in that committee alone, and you can't sit that long. That's why you should have had a Parks Committee, and I always asked every year that I was here that we go back to a Playland Commission. Not only when you were here, when Bill Ryan was the chair, I asked for it, and before that. We need people that really, really care, that are not in politics, to run that commission, but nobody ever seemed to think that was important either. There's a lot of things. I have nothing against asking for questions. I have nothing against, but I do feel that knowing Playland and knowing people coming and the gate, the money at the gate, and the money on the rides, and the money in the concessions, every week, I think, is not enough, because if you get bad weather, 3 or 4 days, you're not going to get what you want. I really think a month would be better. That's my opinion. I'm entitled to it. Whoever says, why am I not letting you get the answers? Bill, get every answer you want. I don't stop you. But I feel that every week it's not enough. Let it go for a month.
To the chair. Thank you.
That's the way I feel.
All right. Other members? All right. Let me help again with some history, because not only was I the chair of Public Works, Parks, Labor, and Transportation, which I was able to be under Chairman Ryan. As a matter of fact, my first weekend as Public Works, Parks, Labor, and Transportation was a very memorable week, because that was the week that the person died in Mind Scrambler. That was my very first foray as chairman of the committee. So while I was in a previous administration, we used to get the report for attendance and figures because it's computerized from a system that we implemented under Chairman Kaplowitz of the Budget Committee, where we put in a system where we were able to identify the people that came into Playland, and we could have had a daily report, because they get one every day. But we asked for the report to be done by a week, and Marguerite Byrne, our CIO, told us, no problem, it's another button push. There's no work that's necessary. And quite frankly, I know that many reports, and whether it's the engineering reports that Ms. Spreckman mentioned as far as public works, as government operations and the bridges and the roads, et cetera, we said, don't do any extra work. Just press the same button. And whether that's for the engineering reports or whether it's for Playland reports, all those reports, unfortunately, go through the administration, where they take the report and retype it, which is silly, but that's up to them. You know, they want to spend their time doing that. That's fine. It's a button push. We used to get the report directly in government operations when I was chair. So I know this report isn't difficult. It's not hard. And that's why the commissioner and the deputy commissioner said it wasn't a problem. It's not. Playland season is 2.5 months long. That's the whole season. Middle of May till about the beginning of September sometime. That's it. There's not a whole 52 weeks. It's not all that kind of thing. It's just this short period of time. And the way that started, by the way, for those that need to be refreshed, was by Act 2011-189, which was the spectator fee issue. And when we said we wanted to understand the number of spectators, and there was a budget that had spectator fees that this board overrode because the people of Westchester already paid and they didn't have to walk in the parks. And many members here supported that on both sides of the aisle. And they also supported the override for that on both sides of the aisle. So people could be with their grandchildren, et cetera, and go through the park. The reason we asked for this report, we started with just asking for it, and we didn't get it. So then we created an act to get the report. And we got the report, and then it changed. And then we didn't start to see all the things in the report, the concession dollars, et cetera. And it's not as simple as, the number of tables that got rented, because if there was an event like the Muslim community from New York that brought 4,000 people to Playland and had the incident with the person on the ride with the Habib, yes, we got all that information. And it was by week, because when it rains, you get to compare year over year and say, oh, the reason we don't have these people is because it was raining, because we do the same things. So it would be unfortunate if people thought that we simply could just ask for the information and we could get it, because it doesn't work that way. It just doesn't. And the information is not time-consuming if, and it's a big if it was just a button push and send the copy of the report, whatever it says. Because we don't want the administration having to do extra work for this particular matter. Does it make sense to spend their time compiling this report? But so everyone's refreshed, because some folks weren't here in the last session on this kind of thing. The report comes from the Chief of Staff, George Orals, on Tuesday or Wednesday, which means it didn't come directly from the department. And you all know, and I don't want anyone here to get it twisted, that we do not have the ability to call a commissioner and ask for a report without it being blessed by the administration, and that's fine. But that's why we come up with acts, to say this is what the report needs to be, so we don't have to go back and forth. Can people say we didn't get the information we wanted, it wasn't the way that we wanted to see it, we gave it to you. This cuts that all out. And it's a button push. If it was harder than a button push, okay. But it's not. And we should have that information. So, hearing the chair not having from the chairs of the two committees, Not having heard for a friendly amendment to the legislation from the committee, we shall vote on this particular legislation as it is. Members, vote your conscience, and we'll go from there. Madam Clerk, long roll call.
Mr. Harkam.
Yes.
Ms. Hano. No. Ms. Borgia.
Yes.
Mr. Burrows. No. Mr. Gelfarb. Mr. Kaplowitz.
Nay.
Ms. Marcotte.
Nay.
Ms. Myers.
Yes.
Ms. Perez. Mr. Ryan.
Yes.
Ms. Shimsky.
Aye.
Mr. Smith.
No.
Ms. Spreckman. Mr. Testa.
No.
Ms. Williams.
Yes.
Mr. Williams.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Item fails 8 to 9.
Mr. Harkam.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. At this time, I would move that we suspend our regular order of business for the purpose of conducting two public hearings.
Mr. Ryan.
Before you act on that, if I could rise and ask that the business that I bring before the board at this point is a necessary requisite to our going into our public hearing tonight on source of income resolution. I know that on all the members' desks is a corrected copy of the draft of the proposal, and this is very, very easy to describe. In the draft of, say, early this morning, which I'm sure you don't have by now, on the third page of the act, specifically page 3 of the act, section 3, V as in Victor, 3, there's an error in the language. 3, counting down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lines, but the sentence in relevant part reads, "The provisions of this article as they relate to unlawful discriminatory real estate practices on the basis of source of income shall be applicable to all housing accommodations with the following exceptions." And further on in the paragraph in D, housing accommodations other than publicly assisted housing accommodations for more than 6 families living independently of each other, and on to the end. Obviously, those legislators who have participated in the meetings, the public record that has attached this, we know that this is an error. And what I'm going to do at this point is, with respect to this same section 3, V as in Victor, 3, amend this language so it no longer reads for more than 6 families living independently of each other. It reads for not more than 6 families living independently of each other, inserting the word not. And as chairman of the legislation committee, I accept this amendment on behalf of the board. This item was also handled by Community Services. And Mrs. Williams, in offering this amendment, is this amendment acceptable to your committee?
It is.
Ms. Williams?
I find this amendment acceptable, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Ms. Williams. Mr. Ryan?
Mr. Chairman, now, unfortunately, although it not is a very small word and 3 letters long, but it changes the meaning of the section, changes a major part of the legislation. It can't be really chalked up to a typo that we're all just advised of. And so, unfortunately, what that means is that we would be unable to act on it this evening. As that is the case, what I would now do is put before the board a motion to postpone our consideration and action on this item to a date certain, recommending June 17th, 2013, which is a regularly scheduled meeting of this board. And the next time, we will all convene together, where we would have an opportunity to take.
Quick point of clarification, if I may, Mr. Chair. You mean the action on the item, the public hearing will still go on
Yes,
tonight as planned?
the action, but we need to, as the public hearing is scheduled tonight, we need to have those who will speak on this item with as much information in hand. And this, although some in the discussion today thought this was a minor change that could be corrected very quickly tonight, it isn't. There is a big difference having the not and not having the not. And so before they come up and participate in the hearing, they should know that we have just, through our two committees, accepted that amendment, which changes, is a substantial change to letter D of that paragraph 3.
Mr. Ryan, yeah, thank you. Mr. Mazzano.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Based on this question that's been addressed by Legislator Ryan, I would like to ask for a brief recess in place. I have a couple of questions about the change that Legislator Ryan has recommended, about some of the legalities of the process we're looking at now, both whether this, whether this is a substantive change, how it impacts the public hearing schedule. If we can meet quickly in leadership and just discuss this.
All right, we're going to be on Mr. Gelfarb, unless you... Mr. Ryan, was your meeting? So Mr. Gelfarb, just so you understand, I believe that we signed out a committee report on the said meeting date. The legislation was corrected in committee, so there was not that final piece of legislation, and I believe that that is what Mr. Ryan is having in front of us now. Mr. Ryan.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, it's clear when you review the record as to what we had agreed to in the legislation committee. However, the draft that we began that meeting with was being reviewed and corrected as we went along. As you will remember, there were many different corrections and modifications. Apparently, in the preparation of this final draft for our consideration, which we saw, I guess within the last few days, not sure as to when exactly it was released, that knot was not included in D. And so when that was discovered by people both on the board and outside of the government reviewing the legislation and brought to our attention, we realized that there was an omission. However, the language is what it is, and you just can't say, well, we meant something else. So at a minimum, what we need to do tonight as a group is recognize what it was that was in fact reported out by the Legislation Committee and Community Services. And that was a piece of legislation that in that particular sentence on the third page of the proposed act, that a not belongs in that sentence just before more than 6 families living independently. And as we know that to be the case, we now have in front of us the correct language. Now we have a public hearing scheduled tonight. So I believe Mr. Mazzano's point is it would be appropriate for the board to make sure that the process it wants to move forward with is one that it's comfortable with. My point is, whatever the board decides, I still believe that we need to postpone this. And in doing so, we need to postpone it to a date certain, which I think would be probably the consensus of the body, but I'm going to suggest that. And so it will be a motion to postpone to June 17th, 2013.
Thank you, Mr. Ryan. We had that. Mr. Mazzano made a motion for a quick recess to get leadership together to discuss that. Mr. Harkam seconded that motion. Members were on recess in place, and then, so you all come on down. Members, we are back from our short recess. Mr. Ryan. Thank you.
I think leadership was able to get together during the brief recess, and they've taken a look at both the language and the process. So two things have been reported to me. One is the process is fine going forward, but there is a suggestion for a further clarification of language that may make it more understandable. So the amendments that were accepted by legislation and community services, once again, inserted the word not, so it would read, for not more than 6 families. What is being recommended is that that be further amended to read, for 6 or fewer families. You know, it's fine. It's fine with me. I can accept that as well. The meaning is the same, and so if it makes it a little bit more understandable for the reader, and for anybody that has to interpret what 3D means, then that's fine. So I would accept that amendment. So the language then would read, after the comma, accommodations, comma, for 6 or fewer families. And deleted are the words, not more than.
Ms. Williams.
Yes, Mr. Chair, I accept that amendment.
All right. So for the members of the public that are here to speak on this item, the language has been modified, and that would be the subject of the language for the public hearing tonight. And because of the laws of Westchester County, there's a requirement that this particular item age at least 3 days prior to it being voted on by the legislature. Mr. Ryan, you have a proposed date, having consulted with many members on this particular date.
Yeah, it eliminates the need for a special meeting. And quite honestly, Mr. Chairman, I think that perhaps not everyone that's come to the chamber tonight, but the large majority of people that are either here or contemplated coming to talk about, were following the proceedings and knew what in fact had been agreed to by the two committees with respect to language. So this isn't throwing anybody a curveball.
Thank you, Mr. Ryan. So that date is going to be...
It'll be June 17th.
All right, when we get to that place in the agenda, this particular item is going to be postponed to a date certain, which is going to be June 17th, which is our next stated board meeting. Correct.
Yes, I would move that.
Okay. Is that your motion?
Yes.
All right, and we'll have we'll do that when we get to the item itself, Mr. Ryan. All right. Mr. Harkle.
Okay. I would, at this time, move to adjourn the regular course of business for the purpose of conducting 2 public hearings, the first being the proposed sewer stakeholder notification law.
Madam Clerk.
Notices of tonight's hearings were published in the Journal News. I have proof of publication, which is available for inspection in my office. Each speaker shall be limited to 3 minutes. The first public hearing is from the Committee on Environment and Energy on a local law amending Section 237.131 of the laws of Westchester County to require that the local legislative body of any city, town, or village of Westchester County considering a resolution to petition the Westchester County Board of Legislators to enlarge an existing sewer district by the addition of an additional parcel or parcels in or upon which a commercial use resulting in the development of any structure or structures totaling 25,000 square feet or more is to be permitted, or an additional parcel or parcel in or upon which 10 or more residential dwelling units are to be permitted, shall provide written notice of the same by certified mail, return receipt requested, to the clerk of any municipality located within the affected district, or to the clerk of any municipality that shares a county sewage treatment plant with the proposed project additions no later than 2 weeks after the adoption of any such resolution. Mr. Chairman, I have no cards.
Thank you. Mr. Harkam.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Madam Clerk. At this time, I'd move to close this public hearing.
Thank you. This public hearing is closed. Madam Clerk.
Second public hearing is from the Committees on Community Services and Legislation on a local law amending the laws of Westchester County in relation to prohibiting housing discrimination based on source of income. I'll call the names of the speakers and ask that you please come down the aisle to my left and wait behind the black ropes. Brian Hollander, Melvin Tansman, Karen Schatzel. And the first speaker is Brian Hollander.
Hi, I'm the Community Outreach Coordinator for Westchester Independent Living Center. We serve individuals across the entire spectrum of disabilities throughout Westchester County. I'd like to address one of the modifications outlined in the Westchester County Board of Legislators as to the proposed legislation regarding source of income discrimination. Part of this legislation affords landlords the statutory right to use, quote, reasonable business judgment in evaluating prospective tenants for rental. The level of landlord discretion must be clearly delineated in this law. There's no definition in the current language that defines what a reasonable business judgment is. So we do pose the question, what are the legitimate factors that a landlord may consider when determining whether to rent an apartment to someone receiving Section 8, Social Security, disability income, or other public or private benefits. The board must be specific regarding these parameters in defining what a reasonable business judgment is. Landlords and prospective tenants should know exactly what's expected of them with the passage of this new important legislation. Thank you.
Melvin Tansman, Karen Schatzel.
Honorable legislators, I feel a little bit redundant under the circumstances, but I have a statement from the League of Women Voters of Westchester, which I would like to read, that was prepared in anticipation of this hearing. The League of Women Voters of Westchester is a longtime supporter of fair and affordable housing, which is greatly needed in this county. We therefore have followed closely the implementation of the housing stipulation and agreement of 2009, which calls for the creation of 750 units among 31 municipalities where lack of fair and affordable housing had resulted in little or no diversity within the respective so-called eligible communities. One tool specified in the agreement and viewed both by the court and HUD as bedrock to that implementation is source of income legislation. And in 2010, the Board of Legislators did the right thing in passing such legislation. Tonight, the Board of Legislators has before it similar legislation that has been the subject of a previous public hearing and deliberation by several of its committees. We in the League of Women Voters of Westchester have two specific concerns about that proposed legislation, the first of which is by far the more important. That is the 5-year expiration of the proposed law, which, as we read it, makes reasonable persons question the county's desire to truly prohibit discrimination on the basis of source of income. Our second concern focused on the wording of the very part of that legislation that Legislator Ryan spoke of and that is being reconsidered in the future. And it is our hope, as a matter of fact, you have adopted the same wording fewer than 6 families that we had suggested. With those changes, we urge the board to do the right thing again and pass source of income legislation as soon as possible. County Executive Robert Astorino then will be able to do the right thing also and sign the legislation into law. It is past time to put this issue behind us so the county can move forward on the work that still remains to be done. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I have no other cards.
Mr. Harkam.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Move to close this public hearing and resume the normal order of business.
This public hearing is now closed. Madam Clerk.
Standing committees. Item 5351 from the Committee on Environment and Energy is a local law requiring any county municipality which seeks to include an additional tax parcel or development within a county sewer district to notify all adjacent municipalities as well as the municipality in which the infrastructure is located.
Mr. Kaplowitz.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. We had a public hearing this evening. I'm not sure that more words have been said for less speakers to come out. I think that's the greatest ratio of that. In that silence, we will get agreement, and hopefully it'll be unanimous this evening. As one who has unfortunately been an active participant in what has at times become turf warfare, should not have been, should not be. This is a good piece of legislation that Legislators Testa, Legislators Borgia, and others have brought forward to us. Congratulations to them for doing so, whereby if in fact there will be additions of reasonable size and above, that really all parties beyond just seeker, beyond just the legal notice, will in fact be noticed, and that all will have perfect knowledge as to what additions, what the volume is, and what the impact might be on various sewer districts, both financially and from a usage on a gallonage basis. So, Mr. Chairman, the Environment Committee stands in support of. Hopefully the colleagues will support this as well, and I would urge and ask the 2 colleagues that worked on this as the chief architects perhaps share their thoughts, and congratulations from the committee to them for their work.
Thank you, Mr. Kaplowitz. Mr. Testa.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I want to thank Chairman Kaplowitz for the patience of getting the wording right on this. Again, there's a lot of words to describe it, but the words are important sometimes, as we're learning in other legislation discussed tonight, that the wording is very important, and we wanted to make sure we got it right, so the legislation did what it was meant to do, and that is to really notify all the municipalities that are part of a sewer district that are going to be impacted by large additions to that district. The sewer wars took place here over a number of years ago. My predecessor was in the middle of them. I was in the middle of them as a mayor, because I was a mayor once of Peekskill, where the sewer plant is. And it's very important that everyone who's impacted by the addition of parcels to a system realize and know what is being added so they can plan for their municipalities. And as the chairman of the committee said, sometimes the environmental review process does not always notify everyone. So what this legislation will do is will give everyone a chance to know what's coming to the district, have an opportunity to comment on it and be a part of the process, and really that will hopefully curb some of the disagreements that have taken place in the past, and maybe we can work through moving forward together as a county. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Testa. Ms. Borgia.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was actually also in the middle of those wars in an even worse position than former Mayor Testa, which I was a staff person to an assembly member who represented 2 of the communities that were fighting with each other. That's a bad place to be. I think this is really common sense legislation. As another former chief elected, I think this is something that really helps smooth over the relationships between municipalities, gives everyone the information when they need it. I think it was a good idea of Legislator Testa's, and I'm proud to support it.
Thank you, Ms. Borgia. Other members? Madam Clerk, a long roll call.
Mr. Harkam.
Yes.
Mr. Mazzano. Yes. Ms. Borgia.
Yes.
Mr. Burrows. Yes. Mr. Gelfarb. Aye. Mr. Kaplowitz.
Aye.
Ms. Marcotte. Aye. Ms. Myers.
Yes.
Ms. Perez?
Yes.
Mr. Ryan?
Yes.
Ms. Shimsky?
Aye.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Ms. Spreckman? Mr. Testa?
Yes.
Ms. Williams?
Yes.
Mr. Williams?
Yes.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Approved 17-0. Item 6057 from the Committees on Community Services and Legislation, a local law amending the laws of Westchester County in relation to prohibiting housing discrimination based on source of income.
Mr. Ryan.
I'm sorry, let me get this mic on again. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As we had discussed a few minutes ago, I'd like to move that we postpone this item to date certain, June 17th, in about 2 weeks for our next regular meeting.
Without objection. June 17. Thank you. So ordered.
Item 5927 from the Committee on Appointments is the reappointment of Claudette Stothers as a member of the Westchester County African American Advisory Board for a term to expire December 31st, 2014.
Ms. Shimsky.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Stoddard has performed her function on this committee ably and well, and we recommend her reappointment here tonight.
Thank you. Members on this item? Unless there's objection, members will take the prior long roll call vote for the approval of the item. So ordered.
Approved 17-0. Item 5928 from the Committee on Appointments is the reappointment of Barbara Edwards as a member of the Westchester County African American Advisory Board for a term to expire December 31st, 2014.
Ms. Shimsky.
Ms. Edwards has likewise served the committee well, and we recommend her appointment too.
Members on this question? Without objection, members will take the prior long roll call vote for the approval of the item. So ordered.
Approved 17-0. Item 4880 from the Committees on Budget Appropriations and Government Operations, a bond act authorizing the issuance of $640,000 in bonds of the county to finance the design and construction management for capital project B0085 MOB elevator infrastructure rehab.
Ms. Myers.
Yes, thank you very much. This is a bond act to fund the cost of design and construction management for a capital project that will repair and renovate the interior workings of our elevators here within the McCallion office building. As too many people have found out the hard way, they're not really working that well anymore. Even though they look great on the inside, they're pretty old. So this would be bonding that would allow us to do an RFP. We would use a consultant for 6 months' worth of design, would then have about a 3-month bidding time, and construction is estimated for about 18 months. I will turn this over to Government Operations, who has experienced the unfortunate ride in the elevator.
Thank you, Ms. Meyer. Ms. Borgia.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As Legislator Myers said, this is the design and construction management for the, as was described to us by the Department of Public Works, the equipment that makes the elevators go up and down. This building was built as a WPA project in the 30s, and the mechanicals of the elevators haven't really been substantively altered since then. The department has told us that it's very, very difficult to get replacement parts, and in fact, they've used one of our elevators as sort of a harvest for the parts that they need to keep the elevators running. We've all experienced some of the sort of operational delays, but we do think it's important to move this project forward so that we don't have any more serious consequences. One thing that I found interesting in the course of this discussion was that we do have 5 passenger elevators in our lobby. One of the elevators that does not have an elevator in it was actually done for design reasons, because at the time, during the 30s, I guess the Art Nouveau design required that they be mirrors, so mirror each other. So that was sort of an interesting thing. The freight elevator is actually the one that's used from the parking lot into the building. So The Government Operations Committee thought this was a project that was well worth our time and money and efforts to do, so we would like to second the motion that it move forward.
Thank you, Ms. Borgia. Members on this item? Unless there's objection, we'll take the prior long roll call vote for the approval of the item. So ordered.
Approved 17-0. Item 6072, from the Committees on Budget and Appropriations and Government Operations, an act amending the 2013 County Capital Budget Appropriations for Capital Project A042B, Stormwater Management Program.
Ms. Myers.
Yes, if I may, I'd like to take this and the next item up as they are actually together. This is a airport bonding that deals with the stormwater management at the airport. And there are two proposed acts here that one would change the financing of the project to decrease the local share so that we can reflect the 5% local share that's required because we do receive federal and state funding for this. And this would be to do the preliminary engineering and environmental review for improvements to the stormwater collection and detention facilities at the detention basins on the airport property in order to reduce the flow of stormwater to the Blind Brook, which then goes directly into the city of Rye on its way to the Long Island Sound. There are no county tax dollars in this request. This is all within the airport's own budget. And I should mention at this point that this does not reflect any increase, of course, in passengers or traffic. I will turn this over to Government Operations, please.
Thank you, Ms. Myers. Ms. Borgia.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As we've seen before in these types of bonds, we know that the FAA actually picks up 90% of the costs. We have received our cost, that match, which enables us to go into this program that allows us to get the 5% match, or half of the county share, which in this case turns out to be 5%. The reason that this is to do the design is that the FAA also requires the environmental design and environmental review to be done first, as we do in our county as well, and that is because, in specific with the stormwater management systems, they are interested to find out if there's any kind of change that has happened over the course of the use of the airport, and so they want to have the design done first before they actually approve the project going forward. So it's important for us timing-wise to do these projects correctly, and one of the reasons why we'd like to move forward is because we are at the stage where we are able to apply for the 5% share. So obviously, stormwater management is an issue everywhere in the county, everywhere in the country, really, but in Westchester County, we do have our unique challenges. So the Government Operations Committee thought this was a fine project to move forward with, so we'd like to second this motion.
Thank you, Ms. Borgia. Members on this item? Members, we're on discussion on item 6, ID 6072, item number 7, 6073. Unless there's an objection, members will take the prior long roll call vote for the approval of item 6, 6072. So ordered.
Approved 17-0. Item 6073, from the Committees on Budget Appropriations and Government Operations, an act to authorize the county to apply for and enter into a grant agreement with the Federal Aviation Administration for Capital Project A042B, Stormwater Management Program.
Ms. Myers.
Yes, as previously discussed, this is the FAA funding part of this project. So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Myers. We've already had discussion on this. Unless there's objection, members, we'll take the prior long roll call vote for approval of the item. So ordered.
Approved 17-0. Item 6074, from the Committees on Budget Appropriations and Government Operations, an act amending the 2013 County Capital Budget Appropriation for Capital Project A054A, rehab of various taxiways.
Ms. Myers.
Yes, again, I would like to take this and the following item up together as they are part of the same project. This is project in connection with the rehabilitation of various taxiways at the airport. Again, it's done in two pieces. One, because we can then have a 5% share that is, we share the 10% funding, we share half of that with New York State. And the second one is so that we can then get reimbursed for 90% of the estimated project cost by the FAA. And again, this is funded through the airport budget. So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Myers. Ms. Borgia?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is to rehab the taxiway areas. They are in need of rehabilitation, obviously, even though we're not increasing the amount of traffic that comes through our airport, this is the kind of thing that you obviously do need to keep well-maintained in order to promote the safety of the airport and to provide the services that we do provide from our county airport. As Legislator Myers says, it's broken out in this cost breakout that we do share the cost between both the FAA and the state, so it winds up being a very small portion that the county winds up paying, and it is paid for out of the Airport Special Revenue Fund. So Government Operations felt this was also a good project to move forward on, and we would like to second the motion.
Thank you, Ms. Borgia. Members, we're on discussion for item 8, ID 6074, item 9, 6075. Unless there's objection, members, on item 8, we'll take the prior long roll call vote for the approval of the item. Shoot. All right, Madam Clerk, we need a long roll call vote.
Mr. Harkam.
Oh, take that back. Unless there's objection, members will take the prior long roll call vote for the approval of the item. So ordered.
Approved 17-0. Item 6075 from Committees on Budget and Appropriations and Government Operations, an act authorizing the county to apply for and enter into a grant agreement with the Federal Aviation Administration for Capital Project A054A, rehab of various taxiways.
Ms. Myers?
Yes, as previously discussed, this is the FAA portion of this. So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Myers. Unless there's objection, members will take the prior long roll call vote for the approval of the item. So ordered.
Approved 17-0. Item 6079 from the Committees on Budget Appropriations and Government Operations, an act amending the 2013 County Capital Budget Appropriation for Capital Project BPS 21 replacement vehicles.
Ms. Myers?
Yes, if I may take this item up with the following item, given that they are both actually with regards to the same project. This is a capital budget amendment to the county's 2013 capital budget to purchase replacement vehicles for public safety purposes. And it actually replaces, we typically replace between 10 and 12 patrol vehicles a year in the Department of Public Safety. And this would create a capital budget item and amendment in the 2013 budget. I will pass this over to Government Operations.
Thank you, Ms. Myers. Ms. Borgia?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This was an item that we actually discussed quite a bit during the budget process. The original request had gone into the operating budget, and then there was some discussion about pulling it out and doing it as a capital project. I know that there's certainly precedent for buying vehicles like this in both your operating budget or in capital projects. This was how it shook out that this came to us. We know from discussion with the Commissioner of Public Safety that these vehicles are really long overdue needed. One of the reasons why the Commissioner had put them in his operation budget was that he felt that they had, that the department was in very dire need of these particular vehicles. So we do sense that there's some urgency on this. The department does use the vehicles for as long as they can, and they are then passed down for other uses. But a police vehicle has some very specific needs Actually, the vehicles that are being replaced are no longer made. So part of the issue with ordering police vehicles is that there's a lot of customization that gets done. There's specific programs that get put into vehicles as per each department's specifications, but also that are standard with police vehicles. It doesn't roll off the assembly line ready to be used as a police vehicle. So this capital budget amendment does reflect some of the additional work, the accessories, the in-car computer video and systems, some of the things that are needed by our police department to do the job that they do so well. So Government and Operations had a chance to really review this with the Commissioner, and we think it's really important to move forward with this at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Borgia. Members on this item? We're on discussion, members, for item number 10, 6079, and item 11, 6080. Unless there's objection, members will take the prior long roll call vote for the approval of item 10. So ordered.
Approved 17-0. Item 6080 from the Committees on Budget Appropriations and Government Operations, a bond act authorizing the issuance of $595,000 in bonds of the county to finance capital project BPS 21, acquisition of replacement patrol vehicles and accessories.
Ms. Myers.
Yes, this is exactly what we were just talking about. This is the actual bond act for this. And of the $595,000, $465,000 are for the purchase of the 15 replacement vehicles and accessories. And the computer video systems make up the other $130,000. So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Myers. Unless there's objection, members, we'll take the prior long roll call vote for approval of the item. So ordered.
Approved 17-0. Item 6082 from the Committees on Budget Appropriations and Government Operations, an act amending the 2013 capital budget appropriation for capital project A0071, airport planning studies.
Ms. Myers.
Yes, this is a capital budget, this is requesting a capital budget amendment to allow for the FAA funding of the master plan that will need to be put in place for the airport, an update to the master plan. And there will be a public hearing that will be set for the master plan. Everyone should be alerted to this sometime this month. This in itself is to set in place the capital budget amendment by increasing the non-county share for this project by $69,635 and then decreasing the county share by the same amount. So moved. I will pass this over to Government Operations.
Thank you, Ms. Myers. Ms. Borgia.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As Legislator Myers says, this is the mechanism for allowing us to receive the 5% match from New York State. The master plan is the revision of the master plan is underway, and it is a little bit overdue because the last master plan was adopted in February of 1987, and I think that typically the Department of State recommends that these be updated in the sort of 10 to 15 year time frame. So it is excellent that we are moving forward with getting the work done that's needed to be done. The Department of Transportation did tell us that they were at the information gathering stage, meeting with the tenants, meeting up with other stakeholders, meeting with other interested parties to create the data that would be needed to update the master plan. And as Legislator Myers says, they are planning to get a public meeting together. I would recommend to all of my colleagues that when that does happen, that we try to assist them with publicizing of that public meeting, because that is something that people should really be involved in. People should know what's happening. If there's any kind of changes being proposed, or if they have any kind of issues, this would be the time that that it would be appropriate for them to talk about Westchester County Airport. I think it's a pretty vital transportation hub in our county, and we need to make sure that the planning that we do for it is correct for the needs of our residents and our neighboring residents too, because it's not only used by Westchester County residents. Anyway, the legislation, as Legislator Myers mentioned, is to complete the funding sources that go into it, and as Legislator Myers mentioned in the other matter of this nature, that the money that the county puts in does come from the airport funds. So Government Operations also would like to recommend that we move forward with this.
Thank you, Ms. Borgia. Members on this item? Unless there's objection, members will take the prior long roll call vote for the approval of the item. So ordered.
Approved 17-0. Item 6083, from the Committees on Budget Appropriations and Government Operations, an act authorizing the county to apply for and enter into a grant agreement with the Federal Aviation Administration for Capital Project A002A, Airport Approach Protection.
Ms. Myers?
Yes, this item would allow for the for the county to enter into a grant agreement for $250,000 to remove. Actually, it provides the funding to remove a light pole obstruction that is located at the Belfair housing development. That has been seen now as an obstruction in the runway 34 approach. There is a cupola that surrounds it, but the light pole itself will be cut down to size, and 50 feet of that pole will be removed. The FAA is providing 90% of the funding for this, New York State providing 5%, and the county would be on the hook for 5%. So moved.
Ms. Borgia?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is an interesting story that we uncovered in Government Operations, which is that this was constructed and there was an agreement with the housing development to allow the county to construct this 100-foot pole that was supposed to that did for many years act as a light to notify aircrafts. Change in the patterns and the technologies rendered it not needed anymore, so the recommendation is to take this down. It's 100 feet now, to take it down to 55 feet, but of course, because of the arrangement that was made with Belfair, that they built this structure around that is significant to them now, so that it's a situation where, as you move forward, your needs change, but you have to still keep the atmosphere and tone of your buildings and your architecture. It's an interesting thing because we face this a lot in Westchester County because we have many old structures, many structures that have character or that have become significant to us, but we have to move forward and make sure that our actual technical needs are met. So anyway, Government Operations believe that this was a good thing to go forward with. It obviously allows us to accept the funding from the FAA, which is a wonderful thing. And then in the future, we anticipate that we will also be able to, once this piece of legislation is done, in the normal course of the application process, to apply for half of the county share. Right now, we're assuming 10%. We assume that we'll get half of that 10% or 5% back from the state. So Government Operations also felt this was a good project to move forward with. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Borgia. Members on this item? Madam Clerk, long roll call.
Mr. Harkam.
Yes.
Mr. Mazzano. Yes. Ms. Borgia.
Yes.
Mr. Burrows. Yes. Mr. Gelfarb. Aye. Mr. Kaplowitz. Aye. Ms. Marcotte. Ms. Myers.
Aye.
Ms. Perez. Yes. Mr. Ryan. Yes. Ms. Shimsky.
Aye.
Mr. Smith. Yes. Ms. Spreckman. Yes. Mr. Testa. Yes. Ms. Williams.
Yes.
Mr. Williams. Yes. Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Approved 16-0.
Madam Clerk, we're going to take some items out of order for courtesy. So let's skip down to item number 25.
From the Committees on Government Operations and Public Safety and Security, an act authorizing the county through the Department of Emergency Services to enter into intermunicipal agreements with one or more of the municipalities located in Westchester County, wherein the county will distribute to the municipality specialized equipment.
Ms. Perez.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The previous legislation on this has expired, and this new legislation is for an additional 5 years. Specialized equipment has been handed out to the municipal corporations. Most or all municipalities in the county have received specialized equipment, including but not limited to personal protective detention, decontamination, and communications hardware, and supplies that enables them to better respond to acts of terrorism involving chemical and biological agents, as well as radiological, nuclear, and explosive devices. So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Perez. Members on this item, Ms. Borgia?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Committee on Government Operations did feel that this was a significant project to move forward on. As Legislator Perez mentioned, there was a need for new equipment because the equipment that we have was purchased after September 11th, which makes it, significantly in need of replacement. The interesting thing, I think, is that there's a discussion within this legislation about the fact that some of the equipment that had been maintained by New York State, they are evaluating whether or not they are going to maintain it any longer. So there is a little bit of discussion between the county and the municipalities about what pieces of equipment might stay in place and what might be removed as a result of the decisions once the state has made their decisions. As Legislator Perez said, this is worthwhile to move forward with because we do have old equipment, and Government Operations did pass this out and felt that this was a good project for us to move forward with. So we'd like to second the motion.
Thank you, Ms. Borgia. Members on this item, unless there's objection, members, we need a long roll call vote.
Mr. Harkam.
Yes.
Mr. Mazzano. Ms. Borgia.
Yes.
Mr. Burrows. Mr. Gelfarb. Mr. Kaplowitz. Ms. Marcotte.
Aye.
Ms. Myers.
Aye.
Ms. Perez. Yes. Mr. Ryan. Ms. Shimsky.
Aye.
Mr. Smith.
Yes.
Ms. Spreckman. Mr. Testa. Ms. Williams. Mr. Williams. Mr. Chairman.
Yes. Ms. Marcotte, your pleasure on item.
Number 13 in the affirmative, thank you.
Thank you. Item 26, Madam Clerk.
From the Committees on Government Operations and Public Safety and Security, an act authorizing the county to enter into a regional partnership agreement with Dutchess and Putnam counties in order to receive funding from the New York State Division of Homeland Security and Emergency Services under FY 2012 Hazardous Materials Grant Program.
Ms. Perez.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. DHSES is awarding $66,000 to the county and its regional partners to purchase hazmat containment system equipment, which will build sustainable chemical, biological, radiological, nuclear, and explosive detection, response, and documentation capabilities, and train appropriate personnel in the proper use of this equipment. So move.
Thank you, Ms. Perez. Ms. Borgia.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Government Operations also had a chance to review this proposal, and we did feel that it was a worthwhile thing to do in terms of sharing our services and our expertise and to make us prepared for emergencies. So we would like to second the motion.
Thank you, Ms. Borgia. Members on this item, unless there's objection, members will take the prior long roll call vote for the approval of the item. So ordered.
Approved 17-0.
27.
Item 5936 from the Committees on Government Operations and Public Safety and Security, an act authorizing the county to enter into an intermunicipal agreement with the Hawthorne Fire District to provide specialized training and fire suppression services for term commencing January 1, 2013 and expiring December 31, 2013 in an amount not to exceed $13,000.
Ms. Perez.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This IMA will allow Valhalla and the Hawthorne District to participate in specialized training and activities along the Grasslands Fire Brigade for the enhancement of fire protection on the Grasslands Reservation. So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Perez. Members on this item, unless there's objection, members will take the prior long roll call vote for the approval of the item. So ordered.
Approved 17-0. Item 5937 from the Committees on Government Operations and Public Safety and Security, an act authorizing the county to enter into an intermunicipal agreement with the Valhalla Fire District to provide specialized training and fire suppression services for the term commencing January 1, 2013 and expiring December 31, 2013 in an amount not to exceed $45,000.
Ms. Perez.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I read it backwards, but as previously discussed, so moved.
Thank you, Ms. Perez. Members on this item, unless there's objection, members will take the prior long roll call vote for the approval of the item. So ordered.
Approved 17-0. Back to number 14, which is ID number 6084 from the Committees on Budget and Appropriations and Government Operations, an act authorizing the county to apply for and enter into a grant agreement with the Federal Aviation Administration for Capital Project A002A, Airport Approach Protection.
Ms. Myers.
Yes, I would like to take us back to the airport, if I may. And this is actually again, an opportunity to enter into a grant agreement to obtain FAA funding for the actual study, the seeker study, environmental research study into the need to either top off or remove some of the trees that are obstructing the view of the runway 34 approach. And this was also discussed at the same time as the light pole obstruction. Budget and Appropriations would like to see this move forward, and I would turn this over to Government Operations.
Ms. Borgia.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As Legislator Myers said, this is something that needs to occur as circumstances change. We need to make changes to make sure that our airport facility still runs in the safest and best way. So Government Operations feels this is an important thing to move forward at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Borgia. Members on this item, Madam Clerk, long roll call.
Mr. Harkin. Yes. Mr. Mazzano. Yes. Ms. Borgia.
Yes.
Mr. Burrows. Yes. Mr. Gelfarb. Aye. Mr. Kaplowitz. Aye. Ms. Marcotte.
Aye.
Ms. Myers.
Yes.
Ms. Perez. Mr. Ryan. Yes. Ms. Shimsky.
Aye.
Mr. Smith.
Yes.
Ms. Breckman. Yes. Mr. Testa. Yes. Ms. Williams.
Yes.
Mr. Williams. Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Approved 16-0. Item 6085 from the Committees on Budget Appropriations and Government Operations, an act amending the 2013 County Capital Budget Appropriation for Capital Project A066C, Miscellaneous Restoration and Rehab.
Ms. Myers.
Yes, this is a capital budget amendment for 62 that would actually decrease our share of the project so that we could accept the non-county share of $62,953. The design has been completed on this. This is for the parking next to Hangar 6 at the airport. So this would be for the rest of for the actual construction of the project, which they anticipate will be finished by the end of the summer. I will turn this over to Government Operations.
Thank you, Ms. Myers. Ms. Borgia.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As Legislator Myers said, this is work that is requested to be done at this time because of the miscellaneous things that need to be restored. It's part of the routine upkeep of the airport, and since it is eligible for both the FAA and state portion of funding, we believe that this should move forward at this time.
Thank you, Ms. Borgia. Members on this item. Unless there's objection, members will take the prior long roll call vote for the approval of the item. So ordered.
Approved 16-0. Item 6087 from the Committees on Budget Appropriations and Government Operations, a bond act authorizing the issuance of $2 million in bonds of the county to finance capital project A083A, terminal systems upgrade.
Ms. Myers.
Yes, as you might have guessed, the folks at the airport are very busy. This is a bond request for up to $2 million for terminal systems upgrades at the terminal at Westchester County Airport, which would refurbish terminal escalators, the ticket counter area, the ground handling renovations, and upgrades to the lighting. The airport terminal was constructed in 1995, and this is actually one of the first big upgrades that we've had to do out there. I will turn this over to Government Operations.
Ms. Borgia.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The only thing I really have to add is that the reason that this is the project in its entirety, as opposed to what we normally see, where we see design or design and construction management, is these particular items don't have a heavy design load. They just are sort of, although the equipment will be upgraded, it won't be substantively different. So Government Operations felt this was appropriate to move forward at this time.
Thank you, Ms. Borgia. Members on this item? Unless there's objection, members will take the prior long roll call vote for the approval of the item. So ordered.
Approved 16-0. Item 6088 from the Committees on Budget and Appropriations and Government Operations, a bond act authorizing the issuance of $160,000 in bonds of the county to finance capital project BPS 11 heavy equipment.
Ms. Myers.
Yes, this is a bond act that came before Budget and Appropriations. It is for heavy equipment, and it's actually known as FATS, Firearms Training Simulator, for the County Police Academy, and a personnel transport vehicle for the county special response and hostage negotiation teams activities that actually can carry 20 special response team officers. This is a great example, actually, of shared services in Westchester County, where we are sharing our services with a variety of municipalities. Our current machine, FATS machine, is 12 years old, and this costs about between $90,000 and $100,000, and then $60,000 would be spent on the actual transport vehicle. I will turn this over to Government Operations for further comments.
Thank you, Ms. Myers. Ms. Borgia.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The firearm training simulator is used pretty significantly for training for police officers in all of our county police departments, and for retraining, upgrading people's training. So it is fairly significant. As Legislator Myers says, it's sort of a good example of a regional piece of equipment being used well by all of the municipalities that make up the county. The transport vehicle is used in addition to crime situations, is also used when we're asked to provide additional security for visiting dignitaries, et cetera. So it is important that we have a vehicle that can provide that level of detail that we need, or level of attention that we need during those times that we are asked to provide it. So Government Operations felt this was a good project to move forward with. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Borgia. Members on this item? Unless there's objection, members will take the prior long roll call vote for the approval of the item. So ordered.
Approved 16-0. Item 6089.
What?
Over Mr. Burrows.
Who? You do.
Over. Next. Thank you.
Item 6169. Over Mr. Burrows.
Yeah, how are they going to close the bus?
Item 6101 from the Committees on Budget and Appropriations and Government Operations, an act authorizing the county attorney buying through the Department of Environmental Facilities to settle the administrative claims of the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation concerning alleged violations of the environmental conservation law relating to force mains and sewer lines pertinent to the Yonkers Joint Wastewater Treatment Plant by entering into an order on consent.
Ms. Myers. This.
Wait, yes.
Hi.
This is actually, unfortunately, but with with reason. This is legislation that would authorize the Commissioner of the Department of Environmental Facilities to enter into a consent order due to violations of the environmental conservation law that occurred when there were unfortunate breaks in the force mains and sewer lines in Tarrytown on March 5th, 2010, that lasted through March 9th, 2010, and again on October 12th, again on August 8th, 2012, and that lasted one day through August 9th, 2012. There were thorough negotiations between the county and the DEC, and what they came out with was a reduction actually in the penalties to a $15,000 fine. Normally this would have been a $37,000 per day fine. But through our negotiations and our good work, we were allowed to pay this $15,000 fine. This actually goes up Route 119, and parts of this main are to be replaced where the breaks occurred. There were 2 repairs, I believe, at this point. I will turn this over to, what this did was, say, this actually resulted in unlawful discharge into the Hudson River, which is the reason for the fines. I will turn this over to Government Operations for further comment.
Thank you, Ms. Myers. Ms. Borgia.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Obviously, our Department of Environmental Facilities is always working in close contact with the DEC to comply with all of the regulations that we need to comply with. The interesting thing about this particular area was that once these unfortunate incidents happened, and they did an investigation about what was going on, they did find that the material that was used in this particular section had decayed in a way that was surprising to them, and that there was perhaps some material that was used at the time of construction that wasn't as good as it could possibly have been. Anyway, it enabled them to really upgrade the project so that it will provide not only better service, but obviously will protect our environment in a more significant way. The project that is not before us right now, but that they are intending to do, is going to be a design project that'll be about that after the design is completed, which is about 8 months, it will take about a year to 15 months to finish. So once that is completed, we will have a stronger system that will be able to withstand, will not have these breaks but also be able to provide more capacity sewer service, so that we hope that in the future we won't see this type of incident happen again. The fine is actually $50,150, but the $5,150 was suspended pending the completion of the work. So it was a good negotiation by the Department of Environmental Facilities, although I do think that the DEC probably takes into account the fact of the professionalism of our department and the fact that they are very innovative in the way that they handle some of our sewer systems are obviously aging, but they are pretty good about keeping on top of things that could happen to provide more environmental catastrophes. So Government Operations felt it was very important to move forward quickly on this matter. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Borgia. Members on this item. This item certainly is important, as Yonkers Joint Wastewater is the largest treatment facility, and we certainly have many other items that hinge on this around the county, specifically legislation that we passed a little bit earlier this evening as far as connecting to those sewage districts. So, unless there's objection, members will take the prior long roll call vote for the approval of the item. So ordered.
Approved 16-0. Item 4875 from the Committees on Budget and Appropriations and Government Operations. Bond Act authorizing the issuance of $250,000 to finance capital project B042B roof replacement program, various locations.
Ms. Myers.
Yes, as we just heard, the Bond Act is to fund design and construction management only of a roof replacement program that would run from 2012 to 2017 at a variety of locations. This was looked at through Capital Budget Subcommittee as well as Government Operations. I will turn it over to them, but it should be mentioned that we are looking at these are roofing replacements at two facilities. It's the Peekskill District Office Building, which I believe had a 10-year membrane put on in 1993, so that's well overdue, and a 20-year membrane put on in 1985 at the Grand Street roof, 143 Grand Street in White Plains, so that's clearly overdue as well. I'll turn this over to Government Operations.
Thank you, Ms. Myers. Ms. Borgia.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The only thing I would like to add is that these new roofs do have a higher environmental value. The R value is 20, which is actually the recommendations from the United States Green Buildings Council, and it has the potential to be LEED certified, but of course in many government facilities we don't actually go for LEED certification because of the cumbersome nature of that administrative process. But this should also provide some energy savings. Because the majority leader had to leave before we finished discussing this in budget today, we wanted to make sure he knew that we did ask about whether or not solar equipment was appropriate on either of these roofs, and because of the mechanicals on the roofs, they determined that it was not a good site for solar on these particular roofs. Thank you.
Members on this item. Mr. Harkam.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Other members. I wonder how our other solar roof at DES is going along. All right.
Tune in.
Members, without objection, will take the prior long roll call vote for the approval of the item. So ordered.
Approved 16-0. Item 4882 from the Committees on Budget Appropriations and Government Operations, a bond act authorizing the issuance of $150,000 in bonds of the county to finance capital project BO15C, interior infrastructure repairs, White Plains Complex.
Ms. Myers.
Yes, this is a request for $150,000 in bonding to fund the cost of design and construction management in connection with the White Plains Complex capital project. It funds the cost of design and construction management in connection with the replacement of existing steam pumps in this building, the McCallion Office Building, and replacing a number of different sanitary mains and vents in the parking structure and associated work. This looks like the design would be done in-house. It would take approximately 4 months, and they will come back to us for bonding for the construction. I will turn this over to Government Operations for other comments.
Thank you, Ms. Myers. Ms. Borgia.
Thank you. This goes beyond actually the routine replacement of these items. The existing sanitary sewer main is not sufficient for the needs of this complex, and the Department of Public Works is actually spending a lot of money every single month doing the backup flushing of the system. So this is actually a very economical as well as necessary repair to be made, because it will eliminate the need to do that to keep our systems running. And obviously, as you know, the complex is interconnected. So what impacts one building impacts all of the buildings. So Government Operations feels we should move forward with this. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Borgia. Members on this item. Unless there's objection, members will take the prior long roll call vote for approval of the item. So ordered.
Approved 16-0. Item 4995 from the Committees on Budget Appropriations and Government Operations, a bond act authorizing the issuance of up to $480,000 in bonds of the county to finance design and construction management of capital project RB124, North Street, Hammond Road, Harrison Rye.
Ms. Myers.
Yes, this is a bonding just for the design and construction management of the repair of this county roadway. It is estimated in the amount of about $480,000. The design phase, it is felt, will most likely reduce the final cost of this actual construction, because few parts of this roadway are actually new due to some Con Ed construction in the area. However, this would allow them to design the remainder of the the roadway that would need to be replaced. And I will turn this over. This is located in Harrison and Rye, and I will turn this over to Government Operations.
Thank you, Ms. Borgia.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The daily, annual daily traffic count is 7,628, and although the road rating was a 73 in 2008, as Legislator Myers said, there's at least a third of the road that comes in at lower than 50, which is really an unacceptable safety level, which is why, even though the statistics as cited in the legislation may suggest that should not be a priority, after speaking with the Department of Public Works and Transportation, we do feel that this is a priority road repair, so we'd like to move this forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Borgia. Members on this item? Unless there's objection, members will take the prior long roll call vote for approval of the item. So ordered.
Approved 16-0. Item 5030 from the Committees on Budget and Appropriations and Government Operations. Bond Act authorizing Westchester County to issue up to $350,000 in bonds of the county to finance capital project B042A roof replacement program, various locations.
Ms. Myers.
Yes, this is bonding for the cost of design and construction management for the new jail roofing. They believe it will be approximately $350,000. It should be done in-house and should take approximately 6 months. It too will be done in the most environmentally efficient method with LEEDs, although in compliance with LEED certification and NYPA recommendations. I will turn this over to Government Operations for further comment.
Thank you, Ms. Myers. Ms. Borgia.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't have too much else to add, except that, once again, Legislator Harkin, we did ask if it was appropriate to have solar on this roof, and we were told that no, because it could present a potential security risk. This is obviously a good project to go forward on. We always want to make our roofs as energy efficient as possible because, as we all know, the highest energy use of our load is in our building. So anything you can do to increase the efficiency of the envelope of a building saves us not only in cost but also reduces our greenhouse gas emissions. So we'd like to move this forward.
Thank you, Ms. Borgia. Members on this item? Unless there's objection, members will take the prior long roll call vote for approval of the item. So ordered.
Approved 16-0. Item number 29, ID number 5942 from the Committees on Budget and Appropriations and Government Operations. A bond act authorizing the issuance of bonds of the county in the amount of $300,000 to fund capital project BIT 15, replacement of E911 equipment.
Ms. Myers.
Yes, this is bonding that came under a great deal of discussion over a number of weeks and different budget and appropriation meetings, largely because there was an understanding that some of these PSAPs, which stands for the Public Safety Answering Points, which includes 60 Control, the Mount Vernon Fire Department, Somers Fire Department, Fairview Fire Department, and the Hartsdale Fire Department, that all receive the E911 emergency calls, are actually going to be possibly replaced in 2014. So the question was, do we really want to bond to replace equipment now that could possibly be replaced again in another year? We were told by the Commissioner of IT that this actually is a very important bonding, and basically it would be used only in the case of a need to fix one of the PSAPs especially in some of our larger areas, if there was an emergency situation and a breakage, and that any part of this bond that was remaining would be utilized for equipment acquisition in 2014, but that this was a very good safety precaution. I will now turn this over to Government Operations.
Ms. Borgia.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't have too much to add. We did feel that this was an important thing to have as a redundancy in our system to make sure that if any of these systems went out, that we would be able to maintain the integrity of the entire system. So Government Operations would like to move this forward as well.
Members on this item? Unless there's objection, members will take the prior long roll call vote for approval of the item. So ordered.
Approved 16-0. Item 5951 from the Committees on Budget and Appropriations and Government Operations is a bond act authorizing the issuance of up to $800,000 in bonds of the county to finance capital project SY075 Pump Station Rehab Program Sawmill Sewer District.
Ms. Myers.
Yes, this actually is bonding in the amount of $800,000 to cover design and construction, as well as construction management. This would replace the force main from the pump station at Ludlow Street all the way to, this would replace, I guess, it's the force main at the pump station. This has been replaced and restored. They will be leaving the older one in place as they repair this one. The corrosion here is actually due to the waste sugar products from the adjoining sugar plant and stray currents that actually come in from the MTA, from the railroad. But it is important that we protect this force main, and therefore Budget and Appropriations did move the entire bond to be brought forward to the Board of Legislators. I'll turn this over to Government Operations.
Ms. Borgia.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The only thing I have to add is that we did hear from the Department of Environmental Facilities that the internal piping and force main at the pumping station are at the end of their useful life. They do have a shorter useful life than other constructions in similar areas because of the environmental conditions that Legislator Myers mentioned, but we do feel that it is important to move this entire project at this time because of the sensitive nature of the area. So Government Operations would like to move this forward as well.
Members on this item? Unless there's objection, members are going to take the prior long roll call vote for approval of the item. So ordered.
Approved 16-0. Item 5952 from the Committees on Budget and Appropriations and Government Operations, a bond act authorizing the issuance of up to $800,000 in bonds of the county to finance capital project SW023 wastewater residuals handling facilities.
Ms. Myers.
Yes, this is another actually environmentally smart move by the county to bond $800,000 to finance a study of the wastewater residuals handling facilities so that we could possibly, instead of trucking what we end up with in our wastewater treatment plants, that our end product, if you will, there, instead of trucking it out of state, which is very expensive and not particularly sustainable, this would look to a way to actually continue to utilize this, because this does have a BTU value, and we could actually recover the energy from this that we could use by somehow dealing with this sludge in ways other than trucking it out of state. So this was definitely approved by Budget and Appropriations for this study, and I'll turn this over to Government Operations.
Ms. Borgia.
Thank you. Yeah, when we had a discussion about this in Government Operations, we were very interested to hear that some of the other places nearby to us, including New York City, has really achieved a lot of opportunities with the byproducts of their treatment plants. So we thought it was a useful thing to go forward on. And as a matter of fact, it's almost unfortunate. This is the kind of thing that makes you think, oh, you know, for example, there's opportunities that have, well, I guess I don't want to make a bad pun here. It's a good, no, I'm going to resist. It's late. We believe it's a worthwhile thing for us to do. It's smart government, so we'd like to move forward with that.
Thank you, Ms. Borgia. Members on this item? Unless there's objection, members will take the prior long roll call vote for the approval of the item. So ordered.
Approved 16-0. Item 5954 from the Committees on Budget and Appropriations and Government Operations, a bond act authorizing the issuance of up to $5,100,000 in bonds of the county to finance capital project SY038 Yonkers Joint Treatment Plant engine replacement and blower reconditioning.
Ms. Myers.
Yeah, this is a significant bond, $5,100,000, but it's funding the design of a project with many phases that involves the installation of a new natural gas main and replacement of 2 diesel-fired engines and blowers with cleaner, more efficient natural gas-fired engines and turbo blowers. This is actually stemmed from a NIPA project that would allow us to convert our engines from and that would convert one engine from this to this digester gas, which would then actually be able to generate electricity. And the whole goal of this study is to find a way to reduce what's known as any kind of flaring of gases and capture it instead so that we could generate electricity from it. I will turn this over to government operations. Again, this was another wastewater treatment plant, fascinating discussion in budget appropriations.
Thank you, Ms. Myers. Ms. Borgia.
Thank you. As I'm sure you're all aware, the operations at the Yonkers Joint Treatment Plant is not, although we are in compliance, have been allowed to have the flare off of our excess. At the present time, that will no longer be permitted after 2017, so it's very critical that we begin this project. As Legislator Myers said, this is the first step of a multi-phase project. The timing, though, is critical. We do need to find a way to make this plant operate in a way that is in compliance so that we aren't in the future subject to fines, and also so that we are running a cleaner and more efficient facility. It will also save significant electricity once all of the phases of this plant, project are completed, which is something that I think that we should be looking at with all of our sewage treatment plants, is the opportunity to do work that does save our ultimate operational costs, and that's a good way to justify projects, even large projects of this nature, even if we didn't face that 2017 deadline that we do have to complete this work by. So government operations felt this was very significant, and we should move forward with it.
Thank you, Ms. Borgia. Members on this item? Unless there's objection, members will take the prior long roll call vote for the approval of the item. So ordered.
Approved 16-0. Item 5958 from the Committees on Budget Appropriations and Government Operations, an amended bond act in the amount of $9,900,000, which includes $1,100,000 in previously authorized bonds of the county to finance capital project SSM74, pump station rehab, sawmills, sanitary sewer district.
Ms. Myers.
Okay, continuing on a wastewater treatment pump station mode here. This is a significant expenditure, bonding for a very significant expenditure, but it actually puts together $1.1 million of bonding that has not been sold, together with a request for $8,800,000 to come up with a $9,900,000 request that would pay for the cost of construction to rehab the Terrytown pumping station in the Sawmill Valley Sanitary Sewer District. This rehab has to do with odor control and pumps. It was actually at one point in our significant discussion described as a sort of a utilization of milk of magnesia in the pump station that would allow us to rehab it. I will turn this over for more discussion by government operations.
Thank you, Ms. Myers. Ms. Borgia.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is maintenance that does need to happen every 15 to 20 years because of our pump station's excessive use, continuous use. As Legislator Meyer said, this is a bond act that does put together a variety of funding. We do think that this is a project that should move forward in an expeditious manner because of the vulnerability at this particular site, and because it will, as Legislator Meyer says, we hope, remediate an odor problem. So Government Operations felt that this was an important project to move forward with, and we'd like to do that, please.
Thank you, Ms. Borgia. Members on this item? Unless there's objection, member will take the prior long roll call vote for approval of the item. So ordered.
Approved 16-0. Item 6069 from the Committee on Budget and Appropriations, an act authorizing the county attorney to...
Over.
What?
Over.
Over, Mr. Chairman. Item 6095 from the Committee on Legislation, an act to provide for certain salary and benefits protection for county officers and employees who are ordered to active military duty.
Mr. Ryan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Legislation Committee took up this matter a few months ago, and through some very productive discussions at the committee table, and also utilizing the county attorney, our HR commissioner, and today a discussion with the Director of Veterans Affairs, Westchester County, Vito Pinto. We have an opportunity tonight to look at brand new law, because the existing law will be repealed with the passage of this. But basically what we're looking at is yet another law that will authorize the payment of the difference between a county officer or employee's military salary and the county salary which the officer or employee would otherwise have received when that individual is performing ordered military duty. And we have a couple of changes that relates to that. And also we addressed two items that we thought were problems, and one was the fact that the ordered military duty had to be in connection with an executive order from years ago. And the long and short of it is that this new law does what we needed to do, but without the requirement that there be a periodic review and renewal of the Act's provisions. So that's a real positive. And we broadened the coverage to include now all ordered military duty. One of the questions that came up, are we able to state in this new law that county health, dental, and vision benefits would be safeguarded for the employee or officer? And yes, we certainly are, and we have done that. Two final comments that we thought were valuable today. HR for years has dealt with certain administrative questions that it's wrestled with because of the law's lack of clarity. This resolves those, and Mr. Pinto mentioned that from time to time in his work with the Guard, reservists, certain clarifications are necessary, and there was no place to go. And so this new law that the committee asks the board to pass tonight resolves that problem as well.
Thank you, Mr. Ryan. Members on this item? Thank you, Mr. Ryan. I know that this is something that we've worked on for a very long time, and I appreciate all the members of the committee having done the review, because there was some twists and turns in it along the way. So thank you and the administration for working through that, and all the members of the committee. Unless there's objection, members, we'll take the prior long roll call vote for approval of the item. So ordered.
Approved 16-0. Item 6138 from the Committee on Budget and Appropriations, an act authorizing the county attorney to settle the lawsuit of Marguerite Holmes as administratrix of the estate of Gary L. Garin, deceased, versus the county doing business as Rye Playland, County Department of Parks, Joseph Stout in his capacity as Commissioner of Parks, Pat Vinci in his capacity as General Superintendent of Rye Playland, SNL Amusement Corp., and Eli Bridge Company, Inc.
Ms. Myers.
Yes, Budget and Appropriations did go into executive session actually twice on this matter, because it is a matter of pending litigation. but this is a lawsuit settlement that was approved by the Committee on Budget and Appropriations. So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Myers. Members on this item? Unless there's objection, members, we'll take the prior long roll call vote for approval of the item. So ordered.
Approved 16-0. Item 6173 from the Committee on Legislation, a home rule requesting the enactment of Assembly Bill Number 7501 and Senate Bill Number 5214, entitled An Act to Amend Chapter 272 of the Laws of 1991, amending the tax law relating to the method of disposition of sales and compensating use tax revenue in Westchester County, and enacting the Westchester County Spending Limitation Act in relation to extending the expiration thereof.
Mr. Ryan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just very quickly, the members have the proposed resolution in front of them. It's very brief. The long and short of this is as follows. A home rule request is needed by Albany that will put the legislature in a position to extend the sunset provisions of the Westchester County Spending Limitation Act to May 31st, 2016. We don't spend a lot of time talking about that, but the importance of extending that act allows the county to extend its sales tax for 2 additional years, and that, of course, would be a corresponding extension to May 31st of 2016. Just very quickly, dealing with aggregate numbers. So what is this worth to Westchester County, its municipalities and school districts over the next 2 years, specifically June 1st, 14 through May 31st, 2016? For Westchester County, $182 million. For Westchester County's local municipalities, $160 million. And for Westchester school districts, $58 million. I'd point out that all prior extensions of this act have been passed by the state legislature and signed by the governor during the legislation that precedes, that's why I gave the figures from 2014 to 2016, that precedes the year in which the legislation is set to expire. And that's a real advantage because that particular practice has given the county and its local budgeting officials numbers to work with as they structure their local fiscal plans. Beyond that, that's really it in a nutshell, Mr. Chairman, and the Legislation Committee urges the adoption of this measure tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Ryan. Members on this item? Unless there's objection, members, we'll take the prior long roll call vote for approval of the item. So ordered.
Approved 16-0. Under special orders, item 6174, submitted by the chairman of the board, a home rule resolution requesting the enactment of Assembly Bill Number 6946A and Senate Bill Number 4653A, entitled An Act to Authorize the County of Westchester to discontinue the use as parkland of parcels of real property in the town of Greenburgh for the purposes of completing certain proposed improvements to Jackson Avenue.
This item is going to be postponed to a time certain, and the reason it's being postponed is because our fellow colleagues up in the legislature are trying to work through some changes which might actually make this whole resolution be modified with new bill numbers, etc. So I know Ms. Shimsky's been working very hard on this particular item, but it's going to be postponed to a time certain. We might pull it up because we need to have a special meeting in order to get this done in their legislative session, which time is wasting on, right? I believe that's going to be over. So I want to say that the time postponed till is going to be June 17th, but members should be aware that we're going to move it up when it has to be moved up, whatever date that is. Motions, resolutions, and call of the districts. Members. Ms. Shimsky.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to add the name Laurette Schechter, LAURETTESCHECHTER.
Ms. Borgia.
I'd like to add the name of Robert Morseberger, Morseberger. He was a very talented musician, songwriter, producer who lived in Croton and was diagnosed, a young man in his early 50s, was diagnosed with a terminal illness in 2011 and decided to make the most of his remaining time. His terminal illness period was a very creative time for him, and I urge my colleagues to look at some of the press reports that I'm sure will be coming out in the next several days. He was actually filmed, and there was a documentary about the creative process during the end stages of a terminal illness. And I had the good fortune to meet him fairly recently, about a year and a half ago, and he was such a lovely person too. So I feel quite personally sad about his passing, but I think it's wonderful that as a very talented artist, he's able to leave such a beautiful legacy to everyone. So thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Marcotte.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to add the name of Catherine Cotter to the memorial resolutions. This is the elderly female who went for a walk earlier this week, and unfortunately, a very tragic end to the search party for her. She leaves behind a good-sized family in Eastchester. She resided on Garth Road, so if we could do that, and if anyone would like to join me in that, I'd be happy to have them. Thank you.
I think that's all legislators. So your motion with all legislators.
Thank you.
Mr. Harker.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Sybil Wild was the mother of our Wendy Wild, who we all know, so if all legislators would join Legislator Shimsky and me on this, we'd appreciate it. Thanks.
Absolutely. Other members? Can you add for me Terry, Terri, Lynn, Ash, ASH? Thank you. And Ms. Spreckman, certainly I would join you with Pat Revo. Thank you. Absolutely. I'm sure Mr. Burrows would want to do that as well. Mr. Burrows and myself with Ann Udis. All right, members, if we all could please rise and observe a moment of silence for those mentioned in the memorial resolutions. Mr. Harcum.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would move that we adjourn the meeting and reconvene on June 17th at 7 p.m.
Mr. Mazzano. Madam Clerk.
Mr. Harcum?
Yes.
Mr. Mazzano? Mr. Williams? Mr. Chairman?
Yes. On the motion of Mr. Harcum, the board stands adjourned.